Hey everyone, everybody watching. Welcome to the One Storey Building podcast show, the podcast show about storytellers and the stories that happen when they tell their stories to us. Cool, perfect. Now, my guest today, my next guest after the ad commercial break is Brodie Whitburn. Now, before I say anything else, is it Brodie Whitburn or Brodie W Whitburn?
It's Brodie Whitburn. Essentially,
so why?
Yeah.
Well, what's with the W on your book? Are you trying to go all J.R.R. Tolkien or George R.R. Martin?
R.R. Martin, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, it was a suggestion that was made to me by one of my other author friends that I met over on Twitter. She read my first book, Rise Up, and she was like, "Oh, you should put your name as Brodie W Whitburn." And I was like, "Okay." So ever since then, I just continue putting my middle name in it.
For J.R.R. Tolkien reasons, just to make you seem a bit more novelesque?
I think so. She did say it sounds a bit more, because I was talking about getting a pen name and all this sort of stuff, but I decided that I'd rather people know the stories that I'm telling, even if they're not in one subgenre or anything like that. It's because I write all sorts of different genres.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than having a pen name like J.K. Rowling having Robert Galbraith or anything like that, so she could write her thriller horror novels, I would have my name and sort of be known as someone who does multi-genre stories, essentially.
Well,
so I thought,
yeah, you are a writer. You've written many things. I first heard of you because of your soon to be large fantasy series of novels, The World of Athoria. And before we even get to that, I of course have to ask the standard writer's question. What got you into writing? Was there a key moment where you thought, was there a eureka moment, or was it just a thing that you were always doing?
It's always been a thing that I've always been doing, really. My father brought me up on movies and storytelling and all that sort of stuff. So movies were always essentially my gateway to storytelling. Essentially, I grew up with Richard Donner's Superman 2, and Superman's an integral part in my life. So watching Superman 1 and then Superman 2 sort of got me into the visual and the storytelling of their philosophies in the way that characters evolve. And then I started getting into books when I was about 7 or 8. I started reading Harry Potter, which most people end up starting reading when they're young. And I was obsessed with Harry Potter, and I still remember reading Chamber of Secrets, got Chamber of Secrets. I finished that within a week, smashed that out, and then Prisoner of Azkaban was my next one. And then I wrote my first book, wrote my first book when I was about 10. And at that age, I finished the book because it was only written longhand, about 30 pages. And
that's pretty good for a 10-year-old. I mean, I guess for me, I mean, I didn't really even get into reading as a hobby until after high school. So hearing about somebody write more than a page when they were younger than 18 is like, wow, really? But actually, you were talking about Harry Potter, and one thing that's always just stuck in my brain about the Harry Potter books when they were adapted into movies. Do you remember in the 4th Harry Potter book, the Goblet of Fire, when they get to the big hedge maze area?
Yeah.
In the book, so many things happened in that hedge maze. Like there was like a sphinx and the world flipped upside down. And then in the movie, they just walk around in a maze. I remember watching the movie, like when's the Sphinx or whatever the hell happened showed up. How do you feel about Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit, maybe your book in the future? Have novel adaptations or novel adaptations, have they been disappointing to you, or have? Okay, great. Well, what do you think?
One thing I like to do, the one thing I like to do with novel adaptations is you separate the artists from the art that they're trying to tell. It's the director is trying to tell a story that he wants to tell that has been told by someone else, but in his views and his ways that he wants to tell that story. So J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter the way that she wanted to write artistically, and then Chris Columbus had come in and he wanted to do Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone in his way. He wanted to tell the story his way, his interpretation of what he read of J.K. Rowling's. So I tend to separate both arts to two different artists' visions, essentially, of that one story. So if I, for instance, want to watch Man of Steel, for instance, with Superman, I'm a huge Superman fan, but you get all these fans out there who say that it's not comic accurate or anything like that. It's the same thing with the Marvel movies and the MCU. Then none of them are comic accurate. It's because it's these artists coming in telling their stories with these characters, but some of them may be good, some of them may be bad. But if you look at it as two separate entities from two different artists, you can appreciate it a bit more rather than going, oh, this should have been like this, it should have been like that. You know what I mean? Like, you can like one and you can like the other. They don't need to be exactly the same, because artists. Sorry, go on.
Do you think that people are running out of ideas, because there are so many adaptations and remakes and adaptations of books and other things happening? I mean, when you were writing this, were you just glad that there was a new idea going out in the world? Because I sure was.
Well, the way that I always look at it is everything in the world is a rinse and repeat of a story already being told, just told in a different artist's vision. You can write the same story and you can write it in your own way and make it new. You know what I mean? Like fantasy stories. George R.R. Martin wrote A Game of Thrones, but he didn't copy Tolkien, but you can sort of see the elements of what inspired Tolkien to write a Song of Ice and Fire series. And it's the same thing with a lot of other authors as well out there, that like they sort of write all different sort of, like Harry Potter is like, you know, the base essence of any sort of magic house in any form of books. And then you got Anne Rice, who writes Interview with the Vampire, is like the sort of basis of, you know, True Blood and things like that. They're all stories that have been told, but they can always be retold in a new way. So I always look at it as something that, it's a story that I love. Like, one of the questions that came up at the authors event was about like fairy tales and things like that, and how they've been retold over the years, and how I mentioned that I'm working on my own story of the fairy tales and things like that, but I'm putting my own twist, my own views. Yet it's still a story that has been told, but it can be fresh, because each person in this world has a unique idea of a story they want to tell, even if it is one that has been told. If that makes sense.
That new Little Mermaid movie that's coming out soon. I so much wanted them to do the old like European version. Where doesn't she like cut her fin into like two legs or something?
It's violent.
And then they turned it into a Disney movie, and then made another one like the Lion King or Aladdin, where it's just the cartoon again.
Yeah, it's like a direct adaptation. The way that I see those sort of movies is, it's Jon Favreau wanted to tell the same story, but he wanted to basically update it for the new generation. It's like you look at Star Wars. The original trilogy was for those from the 70s to the 90s, and then from the 90s to the early 2000s is the prequel trilogy, and then you got from 2015 onwards is the new age, or with the sequel trilogy. And like I grew up with Return of the Jedi, for instance, and Star Wars is a massive inspiration. I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt right now.
Oh, really? Let's see.
Yeah, it's fallen. Sorry, my stool's in the way. It's just Fallen Jedi.
Oh yeah, the game Fallen Order.
Yeah, the game.
I watched a walkthrough of that. It looked pretty good.
Oh, it's an amazing game. Anything Star Wars related, I'm onto. Books, knowledge, anything. I've got a Star Wars group on Facebook.
Well, yeah, I'd say half of the audiobooks that I listen to when I'm in the car, they're Star Wars audiobooks, which I think Star Wars has influenced the way that I think about the world and talk to people. Do you know the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic games?
Oh yeah.
They're like my favorite games of all time, and I haven't played them in quite a while, but I remember, especially with the with the second one, because morality is like a big theme
Yeah.
in the game. When I play as a dark side character, I become more of a jerk in real life. It's sort of it influences
It
me, but
embeds itself. Yeah.
I guess that's the power of stories.
Cinema.
And well,
Yeah.
just going through a story and meeting
The way that
characters.
I always, yeah, exactly. The way I always look at it is, as humans, we have emotions, and those emotions get put into the stories that we tell. And our philosophies are implemented into those stories because we want to influence those who watch or read or play, because that is who we are as creators. And that's why essentially I wanted to write my books, because I wanted to create, I wanted to inspire, I wanted to help influence and help people break out from emotions, or have that sort of getaway. Like Star Wars is my go-to. I would listen to, well, Man of Steel is my go-to for anything whenever I'm having a sort of down day or anything like that. And I listen to the score by Hans Zimmer. But I completely agree with everything you're saying about Star Wars, because it's also, Star Wars is based on the philosophies of Stoicism as well. Like Yoda is a Stoic, you never believe in the negativity and you always push for positives. You never give up or anything, you keep pushing forward. That's why I think a lot of the Star Wars things influences a lot of people, and some people don't realize it. Like you said, you act like a jerk in the game, you act like a jerk in real life. It's like Fable. When you're playing Fable, do you remember that game?
Yeah, I played the crap out of Fable 2. I've played that for, I'd say, at least 80 hours back in the day.
Oh, yeah, back in the day, yeah. No, I remember just staying up nearly 2 days straight playing the original Fable, trying to pull the sword from the stone. And I was like, I'm gonna bulk up enough to get it. But it's the same thing with that. You get, it's the decisions that you make, and it's also your own morals. Even though it's a fictional game, you feel like you're making the wrong choices or the right choices.
Yeah, it's amazing how when you watch a sad movie, you get sad, even when 100% that it's all fake. It just gets to you. I don't really understand how that happened. Not that I've really thought about it that much, but we know that it's fake. Do you think it's because we just relish in the moment and understand sort of the connection of humanity with the people making the movie and us? Because that's all I can think of.
It is a connection. What I find is, I'm watching a TV series right now. It's called This Is Us. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's got Justin Hartley in it and Sterling K. Brown. Fantastic show. Oh, and Milo Ventimiglia from Heroes. And basically that show is just, so emotional that it makes me feel more than anything I've ever felt before. I'm watching it, I'm like, why am I still watching it? My heart is breaking from this. It's because there's a scene where the two brothers, there are two young brothers, one's about 4 and one's about 6 and one's about 10. And the younger brother's got glasses. And this took me by surprise when I was watching it. And the elder brother threw the football and it smacked into his younger brother's glasses and broke his glasses. And his little brother was a bit down. The father is an abusive person who sort of hurt their mother to a certain point, like he was no longer their father at that point. And his little brother comforted him after he said, I don't want to wear my stupid glasses anyway. They make me look stupid, or something like that. And he goes, it doesn't make you look stupid. It doesn't make Clark Kent look stupid. And Clark Kent without his glasses is Superman. And then to me, because I'm a huge fan of Superman, that hit me a lot, because I understand the philosophies that was put into Superman. For instance, his encouragement and his ways of him being alienated in a world where he feels he doesn't belong. And that's why I sometimes feel so attached to Superman, or Clark Kent at least, because of the relations emotionally through the philosophies on his journey, on where he's going in his life. And I think a lot of the philosophies in these stories sort of, we don't realize, but there's something inside of us as we're watching it. We go, I've got this attachment to this emotion that these writers have put into it. And then the actors, obviously being as good as they are, sell that sort of emotion to us. So then we sort of, like you said, get that connection. So that was probably a little bit of an elongated situation.
No, it's like it reminds us that we're not alone, or even that we're not that strange, because there are so many people like us. Now, you just reminded me of something, and this is like a special, unique moment, because I just have to get something that I got today, and okay, just hold on for like 5 seconds. I have to get something. Yeah. Sorry, this has never happened before on the show.
No, that's all right.
We just have to talk about me for a second.
Yeah, all good.
All right, so back in the maybe 90s, early 2000s, there was a movie that came out called Paulie, about a bird that spoke and understood somehow. And I watched it a lot when I was a kid, and I liked it because it's just like a fun family movie. And then I thought, well, about maybe like a couple months ago, I thought, oh, I'll watch it again to see if it still holds up. And it doesn't. But there's maybe one of the reasons why I liked it so much when I was a kid is that not the main character, but the first owner of this bird is a young stuttering girl, and I have a stutter. And when I was watching it, I bought it on YouTube for like $3, and when she's trying to speak, she's trying to say like house and cup, and she's like, and that's what I went through, and still to a certain extent go through now. And then the bird helps her, and I was like, not crying, wasn't crying, okay, but I was like sort of just I had like shaky watery eyes. And
I get it all the time.
the movie is just so special to me, even though it's sort of a generic family movie, and I got a block mounted.
Oh, what? That's awesome.
It's just so I got the poster block mounted because it's just so special to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was about me. But
awesome,
anyway,
man.
back to you. So we're talking about how stories can help us fit in and show us that we're not alone. When I was reading your book, which we'll get to it in a second, eventually, I noted down 3 quotes from the book that really stuck out to me as a theme of escapism. And if you don't mind, can I just say out these 3 quotes? All right, so this one was in reference to, it was in reference to stories in general, I believe. And it's a gateway to another world only if you wish for an escape. I think that was in reference to, reading in general, because the cool thing about this story is that it's sort of about stories, but we'll get to that later. Spoilers. Okay, the next one is when one of the characters is saying, I'm going to get Dad's book and read a little more to take my mind off of all of this. That's when bad things happen. Spoilers. All right. And then I think on the next page, it's Sarah, the main character. Sarah shook her head, knowing she needed for her sense of sanity to remove her mind, if even just for a second, from the situation at hand. So the thing that I got from a lot of this book, and especially those quotes, was a theme of escapism. And honestly, I've never really liked the idea that fiction is there for you to escape your real life, because it just seems to it's like anti your own life. But is this? Do you think that one of the primary purposes of stories or just entertainment in general is to escape the mundanity of your life?
I believe that fictional stories are a way to inspire our lives. So, for instance, I've got a reason why I've written all that in there, and I can't say anything without spoiling the rest of the series. But the way that I see fictional stories as a person is not a way to escape our lives, but to inspire and push ourselves in our own lives. So it's not a matter of reading something to just get out of this world and just forget about everything else around you, but it's to read, to look at this world and then take something from it and implement it into yourself. So you would read my book, for instance, and you would understand my philosophies as I'm writing the book, and then you would be like, I love what's happening in this. And then you would be like, I want to do something like that, or I want to push myself to be better, even though that this is a fictional story. So it's like my first book, for instance, Rise Up, was based on these two sisters who they actually, I got it here. It's backwards, but it's based on two sisters that spend their whole lives together creating fictional worlds for them to sort of have fun, to play around with, and they read their comics, they read their books and all that, and they don't use it as an escape, but they use it as a way to embrace, to inspire themselves. They keep pushing each other with these fictional stories to help them overcome any drowning fears, anxiety, depression. So when one of the girls, Anna, is feeling down, her sister would bring her up by reading her one of the Wonder Woman comics, and how she overcame and rose above everything else. And essentially, that's the way that I like to see fictional stories, as not a way to escape, but a way to inspire.
I have right here the map for the World of Athoria. There's so many little tidbits here and there. It's going to be a whole thing. So I'm curious as to how, in every sense of the question, do you make a map? Like how how do you what do you go through drafts of where the land and where the sea is, and who do you talk to get it all put together?
Jordan, yeah. So I wrote the book first, Athoria, and as I'm writing, because I'm a pantser, so I write as I go. So I'm visualizing everything as it's going.
A pantser?
Yeah, a pantser. Sorry, okay. Yeah. A pantser's sorry?
What's the opposite of a pantser?
A plotter.
Okay.
Yeah, so you got a pantser and a plotter. A plotter will plot out everything in their head. Write everything down in a notebook, each chapter, everything that happens in that chapter and things like that. And then once they've done 50 chapters of plotting, then they'll start to write the book. Whereas I would listen to music, which inspires. So I've got playlists of music, orchestral music, heavy metal music, or whatever it is that inspires me. And I'll sit there and I'll visualize everything that's happened. I'll visualize the movement of the characters. I'll visualize one of my characters picking up a sword, and then I'll know that they're going to be moving into another location. And I can visualize in my head. So they'll be starting in Falgor. I know that they're going to be crossing a river. So then I know that when I'm making the map, I got Falgor, for instance, then I know that they're going to be crossing a river. I know that there's a forest that's close to Falgor because that's where the book starts. And then I know that going up to the left is going to be Barkarith. And I know that further up in the peak, you're going to get the Saranayan Mountains. And I know to the right is where everything else is going to happen. So I know I've also got this little bit of a spoiler, but I'm working on a map to go on top of that map, which is of the skies of Athoria. So you would have all of the land of Athoria and all of the skies of Athoria. And I've got locations in the sky, which will then all be mapped out, which is already in my head on how I can see it laid out. That's how I sort of lay out my maps.
Great. Well, and then it goes on top, and then it all folds together into a neat little into what's it called? A diorama.
Yeah, a diorama. Yeah.
So, how far into the first draft do you go before you start making edits, and how many edits do you make? How much do you cut out from the first draft?
I cut quite a bit out of the first draft. So I got about half. Well, what I like to do is I get about halfway through the book, and because my book's written in 10 chapters and then broken down into different scenes, it makes it easier to go back and edit. So when I know that I'm at a point of writing, I need to take a break from writing, I might drop back and I might edit a whole scene myself as I'm going. So then when I pass it to my editor, it's not going to look so clunky, because as a pantser, you don't care about words. You're just going nuts. You're just writing. You're getting everything from in here onto the computer, because I find if you break your flow, then you'll just find yourself in a smaller rut. So you just keep writing. I'll sit there for 4 hours and I'll just write nonstop. And yeah, that's just basically what happens.
So how do you get into that flow? How do you get rid of all the distractions that would stop you from being able to write that much for that long?
Music. I put my phone away firstly,
Yep.
because that's always a go-to whenever you're sitting there, you go on there in your Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. I'm bad at not promoting my book because I don't like putting up hundreds of posts of my book. But I put my phone away and I put my music on. I'll put Realms of Athoria, it's called, which you can actually probably find on Spotify, which is my playlist of music, and it's got like orchestrated music from The Legend of Zelda. It's got heavy metal band called Illuviati, and just all sorts of different orchestrated sort of music. And I just sort of sit there and I let that music put me into the moment of writing. And the good thing about the way that I'm writing Athoria is that in scenes, I can write it 2 pages, I can write it 4 pages, and then I can go, okay, I can end the scene here. And then I know that I don't need to stress myself about trying to finish the chapter or try and remember what's happening in the chapter, because I've broken it down in scenes. And afterwards, when I go through to the revision stage, I can add more to the scene if I need to. So you can sort of expand on each scene.
What I've heard is a good method to edit or just write stories in general is that when you think that you're about to stop writing, you write half of a sentence. You don't finish it, because when you write half of it, when you return to it, you can just slide back into the moment, rather than like trying to crack open that period at the end. But yeah. I mean, for 4 hours, that's a lot of music. When I also listen to music when I write, but I just listen to, I get like the full soundtracks of video games on YouTube, and it's like 1 hour and 12 minutes. So when an hour is up, I'm like, yep, done. That's enough for today. But like, so so you just compiled music over the years and years and put them into one big. Don't you get bored of listening to the same music, the same sort of fantasy music over and over again?
Nope. I listen to it all the time.
Not melodious enough?
Nope. No, I've got two Athoria playlists. I've got the Heart of Athoria playlist and I've got the Realms of Athoria playlist. I sort of flip between them. And usually what happens is with Spotify, it hits a radio. It goes in songs that are similar to such and such. So then it will automatically start playing new songs. And then I'll be like, oh, I like this song. And it'll add to my list. And then it just adds all these new songs to the list. And then I hit random and it'll just randomize. But the thing with the orchestral music that I do have is that each song basically has a scene in my head that I want to write. So I got a song by a Welsh band called Primrose. No, sorry, the song's called Primrose. I can't remember the name of the band. I always forget the name of the band. But there's something unique happens in that song. And visually in my head, I've got this scene. So every time I go back to that song, I visualize that scene that I want to write. That's in the 3rd book, which is nowhere near being written yet, but I know it's all in here. So it flashes back, which then gets me excited to wanting to write that scene, because I'm super excited to write that scene. And it's sort of, every time I hear the song, it just gets me more excited, because all I'm doing is visualizing my book as a movie in my head. And that's how, that's just what happens to me. So every time I hear it, I'm like, I can visually see my story come to life.
So being able to visualize it in your head, like that's tied to the writing?
Yes, very much.
So we've talked a lot about your World of Athoria book, but we haven't really talked about your World of Athoria book. So just generally, do you want to tell everyone who's watching about the World of Athoria? Why make it a series? Why make it fantasy? And why bother writing it?
Well, quite a few things. So it originally started as a short story, which was called In the Heart of the Garden. And it wasn't originally a full-blown fantasy series. It was more of a heartfelt story that sort of came to me when I was with my 2 girls. And I've got 2 daughters, 7 and 4. And that would have probably been about, I think, 3 and 6 when I first wrote it. And as I was writing the short story, which is the first 2 chapters of the book, because it was originally supposed to be just that, then I had this idea that popped into my head, and then this world, as I was listening to the music, slowly started becoming bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it just exponentially grew. So eventually started becoming it was going to be one book, and then it became two books, and then it became three books, because I've had these characters that I've thrown in that I've come to love as I'm writing it. So then I fitted them back in to, say, a little bit earlier into the book, trying to be blasé so I don't spoil anything. But then that character has then got their own arc that I wanted to tell, which is different to the arc from the main character that I'm trying to tell. So then eventually it became, I'm a huge fantasy fan, like massive, like Song of Ice and Fire. And like, I've got all my books, like I've even got this beautiful Beasts by George R. R. Martin, Clash of Kings, fully illustrated, beautiful baby thing. Cost me a lot of money, but amazing. I got all the book series literally sitting right next to me. And so fantasy is just a massive influence on me. So it slowly, naturally started making its course to fantasy. And then it just grew. And then all of a sudden, as I was writing the first book and then had the idea for the second, then I thought the first one I want to call the World of Athoria, because it's the sort of introduction to the world of what I'm telling. Then I had the idea of doing the Heart of Athoria and then the Legend of Athoria, because the story at the beginning of the book is a story from the perspective of an author writing these books for not for his kids, but with his kids in mind. And then the Heart of Athoria is essentially telling the heart of the story, because it's the middle of the trilogy. And then the Legend of Athoria was the name that came to me because it's about the legend that was told over these three books and the legacy it's going to leave behind. And as I got to the point in my head, like I've got all three of those books planned out in my head already. But as I was writing the first book, I had all these little myths and legends that were coming through, which if you read the book, you'll hear the author, Martin, talking about him writing short stories in a book called Myths and Legends, Tales of Athoria, which is a book that I'm actually working on that tells the short stories. So you'll be able to read the book that the author in the book is writing. So then the readers will be able to read a book that was written inside of the book to sort of immerse themselves even further into my book and the myths that that author is creating, which I'm also creating, to sort of expand on that world.
Because you are a pantser writer and it's all the ideas are wafting around in your head, do you ever have to make some active writing decision when you're in the middle of a scene, thinking to yourself that this scene requires this specific kind of character, so even though I'm not really, I wasn't instinctually thinking about it, I have to put him in here? Just as an example, fairly early on in the story, the main character Sarah meets another character called Forrest, who's the first character that she meets in this new fantasy world. And I initially thought, okay, this is sort of the character who will have a small part at the start that will introduce her to the world, and then he'll wander away, and then she'll go to a bigger thing. But he just stuck around and becomes more and more important as the story goes on. So was a character like that or any other character put into the story to serve that sort of mechanical function, or did you just think it and then do it?
There was so Forrest was always a main character. He always wanted to sort of introduce the people to Athoria on a bang. So it was always waking up. Ciarathan has woken up. She meets Forrest, and it's on the go. And right from the start, it's just a movement.
Ciarathan is Sarah's fantasy name. There's Sarah and there's Ciarathan. Yeah. Not to spoil things, but yeah.
No, yeah. No, that's correct. So Ciarathan and Sarah is essentially a character that was created by Martin, the father, who used his daughter as inspiration, as a strong character in his book. So that's where that name sort of came from. And it's that sort of, take on it. I can't really say anything without spoiling. I'm really bad at spoiling things.
I can bleep out this.
Okay.
The spoilers. Say whatever you want, and I can edit around it.
Okay. Well, so basically, Sarah is Ciarathan, and they sort of it's a sort of bond between the two worlds. That sort of connection. She is a connection because she is a character that created by Martin, and the daughter, being Sarah, is that inspiration behind the character. So that's where she sort of bonded to. And when you read the beginning of the book, Sarah is reading where Ciarathan sort of left off, where Martin had finished. So the story that you're reading is a story being told as it goes. And then that would lead to what the ending that I've got in my head.
Yeah, that's what I like so much about this story, is that it's a story about storytelling and stories, which is why I started all of this. So it all comes together. So
Yeah.
what advice would you give someone who hasn't written anything? What should they start thinking about and start planning and doing or pantsering if they want to write a massive fantasy or anything else epic story?
My philosophy behind it all is don't think about it. You have an idea, take it and go. Don't just stop. Don't start overthinking things, because once you start to overthink, you start to overexhaust yourself, and then you find it becomes too much of a mission. It's like when you, for instance, some people will want to go and read The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, but they're like, oh, but it's 18 books. You know, it's so much that you got to invest into. So when people start over investing right at the start, they start getting exhausted. Athoria only started as a short story, and it gradually grew because of an idea. And I didn't stop. I had this idea. I just wrote it down. I don't stop. I don't, think about it and try and break it down. You just got to write. The only way you're going to be able to tell your story is if you actually sit down and you expand on the idea, and you just keep going with it.
So there was never a point halfway through writing where you thought, okay, for this story to click into the beats of the hero's journey, I have to crowbar this scene in to make it fit. There was never any thought like that?
No. I appreciate the hero's journey, being Luke Skywalker, being one of my favorite all-time characters. But I don't, the way I tried looking at Athoria when I was writing it was, it's a story that's in my head, and I'm writing it on a whim, not on a whim, but I'm writing it as I'm seeing it, because I don't want to follow any tropes. I don't want to follow any sort of hero journey. I want it to be its own natural course. So any character, like I've got a character named Rin, she's going on this journey where she was one of the minor characters who was only supposed to be just in there for a small part. And eventually she's actually one of the main characters of the whole series now, because I was like, I absolutely love this character. She's just absolutely grown. And I know she's got this sort of arc that she's going on, but it's not a planned out. She's not going to be like, I'm not going to go, okay, I want her to start at this point. Then she needs to get to this point to then reach this point of the story. If something happens in between, something happens. Like, it's hard to explain that sort of writing process without spoiling things to a certain point, but it's like, don't think about it, just do it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think that's I mean, when you write, when people write as much as you do, it just becomes muscle memory, because it's a skill. The skill in general is just muscle memory. You just have to write and practice. At least that's my advice. As someone who writes less than you, maybe if I did, I'd go crazy. Like, no, don't do it. Don't write for 4 hours. You'll get lost in your
I don't write for 4 hours every day. No,
okay.
Yeah. No, that's it. I work 10 hours a day as well.
No, sure. So it's like 1 minute each day spread amongst a month, and so it's 4 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You said that you liked Luke Skywalker, and I have to ask, what did you think of episode 8, The Last Jedi, and Luke Skywalker's portrayal in that movie?
Do you want to know?
Yeah, of course. The show is about
It's my second favorite Star Wars film.
Really? Please go on.
I walked into the movie.
What's number one?
A New Hope.
Okay, yeah. I like A New Hope more than Empire. Empire is usually like the main one that everyone says, but I like 4 more than 5. 5 is good. Yeah.
Yeah. I love them all, but A New Hope and The Last Jedi are my 2 top favorites. Empire sits at like 6th, I think, on my list.
6th, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I was not expecting this.
Yeah.
So for me, my Star Wars list, it goes pretty much like 6, 4, 5, 3, 1, 2. And then I forget that Solo was fun, but I forget that the other ones existed. Yeah. What's yours?
Well, mine is obviously A New Hope, The Last Jedi. Then it's Return of the Jedi. Then it's Revenge of the Sith. Then it's probably Rogue One. Then it's sort of a tie between Solo and Empire, because I really enjoyed Solo.
Yeah, me too.
And then it'll be probably Attack of the Clones and Phantom Menace. Rise of Skywalker sits at the bottom.
Okay.
Force Awakens.
So, and Force Awakens is a little bit better than Rise of Skywalker?
Force Awakens is higher than Rise of Skywalker.
Okay, so Rise of Skywalker is like the trash, and The Last Jedi is okay. So I'm interested why you just would dislike the Rise of Skywalker, because no one really talked about it. It was just sort of flopped out there. I thought the Emperor being on that big mechanical arm was a cool visual. If it was in a better movie, it would have been so cool. But I was just like, sure, whatever. So
yeah,
we'll get back to you and your book. And please, why is The Last Jedi your second favorite Star Wars movie?
Because it showed that Luke was the spark of hope that the galaxy needed. He thought, if you go in through to the history of Star Wars and the Jedi back when the New Republic was in, they eventually became more like generals in a war rather than peacekeepers of peace. That's why
Qui-Gon keepers of the peace, not soldiers.
Yes, exactly.
As most Hindu says.
Exactly, but they ended up becoming more generals than anything, and then that's how they were manipulated by the dark side and fooled, and that's how the rise of the Empire happened. And Qui-Gon Jinn knew that was going to happen. He always believed in the ways of the old Jedi. And that's why I believe that Luke himself, studying the Force and the Bendu and all that sort of stuff, and he knew that the Jedi needed to die so a new light would rise to meet the darkness. So he didn't give up on everything, but just as everyone else is, we're all human. Luke was a human as well. He may be a Jedi master and he may be the strongest of us all, but he realized in the end that he was a spark of hope that the galaxy needed. And he realized that he was wrong. The Jedi didn't need to die. He just needed to bring that hope back to the galaxy. And that's exactly what he did. And that's when you see the broom boy. He would come up at the end and he had raised that broom thinking it was a lightsaber because he wanted to bring hope back to the galaxy, just as Luke Skywalker did, because Luke in the end became a legend across the galaxy. Because as you also see in The Last Jedi, there's a tie between the two wars where there's that point in the middle on the Canto Bight scene where you see these characters betting away their money, don't give a shit about the war, they don't care about anyone else that's going around because they're just happy for the money. They're selling out, military weapons to the First Order, and they're selling to the Resistance as well, and they're just both fighting their own wars, and they're just sort of stuck in the middle. And then Luke Skywalker's arc in there is he thought he had failed, and he just never learned from that. And then towards the end of it, when he realized that Rey was that sort of hope that he needed to bring that balance, so then he force project himself across the galaxy to stand in front of Kylo Ren. But also, a lot of people wanted this Luke that was able to use the Force to bring down the AT-AT destroyers and everything like that, but don't realize that
his Force pushes all of the AT-AT into space. Directed by Delia. Yeah,
exactly. But the way that I saw it was he brought back the spark of hope, the true Jedi way, by using the Force for knowledge and defense and never attack, because he never attacks Kylo Ren. He uses his anger against him, and he knew that that would be Kylo's failure, because Luke had the Jedi reborn, the hope in the galaxy reborn by his sacrifice and on Crate by saving the last remaining parts of the resistance, and then allowing the light side, being Rey within her, rise up again, because the wheels of the Force were able to put themselves into Rey to then be the next light, essentially.
Yeah, Luke doesn't attack Kylo, but he does a cool Matrix lean back kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But why did he show up to Crate as a hologram ghost Jedi hologram thing when he was just going to die anyway? Why didn't he just show up there and
because he wouldn't have made it in time. He wouldn't be able to make it in time. He felt with the connection with the Force, you'll be able to feel everything, because if you watch the movie and pay attention to what Luke's training Rey, it's all about the connection within the Force. You can feel everything, life, death, the whole lot. Everything is connected within the Force. As Obi-Wan Kenobi said back in the original, is the Force connects every living thing. So he knew that Leia was in a dire moment. He knew that at that point he was wrong. And that's when Yoda came back to him and said that he never learned from his failures. And he wasn't wrong. So he wouldn't have been able to make it in time to that. But the best thing he could do was one of the most Jedi mastery moves of all time, was being able to force project himself halfway across the galaxy to help give them time. He didn't realize he was going to die, but with everything that he was doing, the sacrificing, he was willing to give up to save the galaxy, to sort of give hope back where he could, because he knew that he shouldn't have given up.
Where was Yoda and Kenobi and even Darth Vader Skywalker as a ghost? Why didn't they show up sooner? When Luke was above sleeping Kylo with his green lightsaber ignited, I just have this vision of three ghosts that Luke can't see going like, "What are you doing? Stop it!" Like, why didn't they show up sooner and stop Luke from being all like, he's going to be evil?
Well, I think it's because it's more about destiny and the way as the Force. It's like the connection within. They're not allowed to interfere to a point where they have to prevent anything from happening, but they're allowed to influence. And at that point in time, he was so manipulated by fear that everything else around Luke was dissipated. He couldn't see anything else but the fear, because of what he had actually seen. And whether or not that could have been visions of the dark side that were implemented into Luke to make him push Kylo away from him, to push Kylo more to the dark side, is to be said. I mean, it all depends on the interpretation that you take away from the story that's being told, because there's three different versions of what you see with Luke. You know, Luke was always very drastic, and he always just jumped at the motion. He didn't think, he just went at it. But when he held his lightsaber above Kylo Ren, he realized he was looking down at a young boy. He realized that he was wrong, but it was too late at that moment. So it wasn't a matter of Obi-Wan, Anakin, or anything like that being able to come in, because they never knew what was going to happen, because you don't know the manipulation of the dark side during those moments.
I think the Star Wars sequel trilogy started like 20 years too late. I would have loved to see Luke and his school and the students, and see Ben go all evil and stuff, but it just happens. It happens too late, and all of the interesting stuff is all like suggested in the past. Yeah, that's my biggest problem. It's just so.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. The reason why I like The Last Jedi so much is, well, let me ask you this: what do you think of Batman versus Superman?
Oh, I don't really think about it. I watched this in the cinema, and yeah, it was okay, I guess. Kind of dark and gloomy, but I really don't have many thoughts on it. You've asked the wrong person.
Yeah, it's like my all-time favorite movie.
I thought Ben Affleck as Batman was better than I was expecting.
Oh, he was amazing. But it's more about the way that I always look at The Last Jedi, and the arc that Luke got taken on was the point where he started was, you know, something that we never knew him as, and he became that hope that we had always known him as. And when Batman vs Superman started, he looked at the destruction of Metropolis made by Superman, and Zod. So he's seen all this destruction happen around him. He's already lost his family. He's been in the business. Well, he was being a vigilante for 20 years in Gotham. And what he saw in Metropolis broke him. But what a lot of people don't understand is the metaphor of, or the philosophies that are implemented into it, of Batman having PTSD from the most traumatic moment in his life being the death of his mother and his father on the streets of Gotham. And the trigger word is the very last word that his father had said, which was Martha. And that's what prevented him from killing Superman, because then he realized that he was in the wrong. He had become no better than the villain that killed his parents on that fateful night. So then he sort of broke out and he said that Martha won't die tonight, because he's making a promise to Clark that another Martha will not die. He will make that promise because he couldn't save his own mother, and he's going to save Clark's mother.
Isn't that scene like a funny mocked meme scene where it's like, why'd you say that name? Your mum's called Martha, therefore I won't. Your a scene that you like has been mocked by the entire internet.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
It happens on both ends. But it's not just that, it's also the philosophies implemented in Clark and finding his place in the world, finding his sort of story. And he's in a world that he feels alienated and lost. And his father, Jonathan Kent, is implementing his philosophies of Plato. You can actually see Clark Kent when he's about 11 years old being bullied and reading The Republic by Plato, and how Plato's Stoic philosophies are implemented into him by his father, and the human philosophies implemented into Clark. Even though he's an alien, he's so attached to human philosophies because of the way that he's being brought up. And his father is the one that's bringing him up in this world. But since he lost his father, he's been struggling to find his place in this world, because he's had to kill the only surviving members of his planet, of being Zod. You know, he could have rebuilt the world that he had come from, but instead he chose the world that he grew up with. And it's all about that sort of philosophy. And then Lex Luthor, trying to play God by making God bow to his will. And since God never did bow to it, he eventually got down on one knee, but he never stayed down. So he played God by creating an abomination of Doomsday, which is a mutated version of human DNA and Kryptonian DNA, being Zod and his blood. And he wanted to create something to kill a god. And that's essentially what it is. And then towards the end, it was Superman realizing that Lois is his world, and he would sacrifice anything for that. And when he killed himself to save the rest of the world and to save Lois and Bruce and all that, he gave that sort of hope. And that's why when you see in his monument, is if you seek his monument, look around you, because the world's still around you. He saved all of us. And that's what sort of sparked Bruce to realize that he needed to rebuild the Justice League. He needed to protect, because he tried to kill the one person that wanted to save the world from destruction and death. And that's why it goes into Justice League. It's all about, in Norse mythology, you get your birth, your death, and your rebirth. And Man of Steel was the birth of Clark Kent, the birth of our savior. Then in the darkest times, it was Batman versus Superman. And you see that it's always dark before the dawn. And then you got Justice League, which is the rebirth and the rise of the hope in the galaxy. In the world.
The galaxy.
And the galaxy.
Luke joins the Justice League and saves.
I'd watch that. But that's my take from it anyway. It's the philosophy. I mean, everyone has their own interpretations of it. Like Man of Steel also just reminds me of me as when I was a kid. You know, I'd run around with a cape on my back trying to pretend to save the world, or, you know, do the right thing. And it's all about the decisions that we make us who we are. And that's why I like Man of Steel so much. And you'll read that right at the end of the book when you, if you read the author's note, the author biography is Man of Steel, the philosophies implemented into it inspire me in my life because of the philosophies implemented in it by Zack Snyder himself. He implemented these philosophies of Plato and our journey and us finding our place in the world. If I ever felt lost, you know, as some people do, they're like, I don't feel like I belong in this world. It's like, well, you do. You got to keep going. You got to keep pushing. You got to find your place. You know that this world is here.
Yeah, I think characters are at their strongest when they are vessels for themes and ideas. Which, well, that's why in just to bring it back to Star Wars, because Star Wars is cool. In The Rise of Skywalker, when the Emperor comes back, it was I was under the impression when that's in Return of the Jedi, somewhat Empire, that the Emperor was symbolic of the dark side within Anakin Skywalker, which is why Darth Vader gets redeemed as soon as the Emperor is dead. And now in Rise of Skywalker, he's back, but he doesn't symbolize that anymore. So he's just some old evil guy with magic powers.
He's a shell of no one. He's trying to, yeah, I know what you mean. He is the embodiment of evil that manipulated Anakin to become the dark side. And they sort of changed it a little bit by obviously the new rise to the hope and all this sort of stuff. The prophecy wasn't foretold. Anakin wasn't the prophecy and all this sort of stuff, but he was the prophecy. He did bring balance back to the Force by destroying the dark side, being Palpatine. But that was destroying the parts within him, that manipulation that Palpatine had over him. He sort of disconnected that sort of dark side umbilical cord, essentially. And he rose back to the light side by his family. And that was his sort of hero's journey. He went backwards in the hero's journey. And the way that I saw the return of Palpatine was, it was the dark side of the Force, the most darkest part, was trying to grasp on to what was left of his reality, try and make his way back to the physical realm, essentially. He was like a soul that was just stuck in limbo trying to find his way. And that's why he used like cloned bodies of him and Snoke to be able to manipulate his dark essence through different bodies to eventually come back to that realm and then eventually get a vessel so he can rule again and rise again, sort of rinse and repeat history. So that's my take on Palpatine coming back.
Yeah, when you write your own characters, do you yourself put into them certain themes and motivations for the story? For example, when if you've got a story and you've got a main character and you need them to learn some kind of lesson, do you then invent a character that has the theme for the story that then gives them that lesson? Is that the function of the characters in your stories?
Sort of. I've got a scene in the second book that I'm working on right now, but it's a character that's been in my head from the start of the book that I know it's going to be a crucial point in the middle of the book for a main character to then push them to where they need to be. Like, it's a crucial part in the heart of Athoria, essentially the main heart of the story, which is a character that I have created specifically for this scene, which is but his essence is throughout the whole book, if that makes sense.
His theme and purpose for being there carries through all the entire story.
Basically, that one character is a string that sort of ties everything together. But he is a character specifically made for the second book that sort of blends everything in. Okay, sure. There are some smaller characters that are sort of thrown in for smaller arcs, like the Savages and things like that, so that sort of deviates into little other areas. There is a character that I did create specifically to push in one of the short stories that I've written in the Tales of Athoria, which is actually at the back of that book that you've got, the expanded edition. You get 2 short stories from the Myths and Legends, and it's called A Friend Within the Essence of Athoria. And
I'll find it later.
Yeah. So I created so that story, I had one character that was created, but without spoiling it like, she was created for one purpose, but her essence of her stays in the story throughout the whole series, if that makes sense. So she has a crucial part. She's a character specifically made to help this one character move forward. But that one character is a character that's in the main series of books, who is a crucial part of the history and the lore that I've created in Athoria. But then this character, the girl character, has that sort of part that's moved on and stays with this one character that she's influenced. So essentially, yeah, to cut the answer short, I have created characters.
Yeah, the answer is yes. But,
yes.
So you're creating a large fictional fantasy world, and what I am very interested in is, what is the process of getting a book published? Because it's always been very sort of vague and in the mist for me. Who do you talk to? What do you do?
Well, there's different ways that you can do it. So I found out about a publishing service called KDP, which is Amazon's publishing services. So you can actually do everything yourself. You essentially are your own business, but you are the sole writer. You write the book. You can hire someone to format the book, to edit the book, to create your covers, and then you go onto Amazon KDP, and then you create your account, and then you put all your formatted work inside of this platform, and then it publishes the book for you as a print on demand. So you can get it all printed out immediately. But then you can go to places like Nook Press, which is a press service for Barnes and Noble, which is essentially the same thing. But they also do hardcovers and dust jacket books as well. And then you've got Ingram Spark, where you pay $50 to the company, and you can do a ebook and also a printed version, whether it's a hardback or a paperback. But essentially, it's you write the book. You can either format it yourself, so you format the page to the correct sizes and everything like that, and do what you need to do, or you can hire someone to do that for you once you've written the book. Or you can go down the traditional route.
What is the process of formatting a book? So what program do you write in general?
I'm writing in a program now called WPS. It's like I can't remember, something Office. WPS Office. It's like it's a free version of Microsoft Office. I don't really like Microsoft Word. I did originally start writing in Google Docs, but I found it was very delayed and very slow. And I found it very hard to format in that. So I found WPS Office, and it's just absolutely fun. It's so easy to use. And basically what I do when I'm writing, I automatically format the pages from A4 to the correct sizes, which is 2032 and 12 inches. So it's the 12-inch pages by 13.2. Oh, sorry, 2032. And I write it. So then once I finish the book, I can immediately upload it. If I can download the PDF for it, and I can immediately put it onto the program of Amazon. So then it's basically all ready to go. So you can format your borders and everything like that to the point where you feel happy. It also helps with your word count and the filling of the pages and how it looks like on page. So that's what I like to do anyway. So I get all the formatting and everything like that done right from the get-go. I put all the page numbers in so I can keep track of all the page numbers. And then you can see the word count, you see the page numbers, you can see how your actual pages are being filled and how they're going to look when they're actually printed. So it just makes it easier.
Does that help with your does that help getting the creative juices flowing, seeing how it actually might look as a book?
Oh yeah, definitely. When you see it, and I've got all the chapters planned out for the second book, all the way up to chapter 10. They're all titled and everything's named. I've even, like you said earlier, where some writers would write half a sentence and then leave, and then when they come back, they know exactly and they can flow on. I've written a couple of things that I know where I want them to start as soon as I get to them. So I've already automatically written them, so I know exactly where I'm going to start, and I already know how that scene's going to unfold.
Well, great. So we've already sort of talked a lot about this, but I of course leave the most important question with this for last, and that is, of course, why do you think that stories are important?
I believe stories are important for many different reasons, whether it's like a visual storytelling or if it's audio, like music wise, because all stories influence us as humans. And I believe that if we didn't have any form of art, whether it's even if paintings, we all take a sort of influence from painting and inspiration from painting. If we didn't really have that, I think that we would sort of just be shells that would just walk around and go back and forth between work just to live, just to survive, essentially. But with art and storytelling, I think it's very integral to be able to take in other people's philosophies and other people's stories to sort of inspire them to keep pushing and moving forward in life.
it seems to be the thing that all people aspire to be engaged in, even as just an audience member. When somebody wants time off work, it's so they can it's so they can watch a movie or just look at a beautiful sunset, some kind of like artistic thing. It seems like art and stories, they seem to be a thing that's just going to be around forever. It can't be made obsolete because it's what we all quest for.
It's something that's always been around, and it's something that always influences us. It's like whenever I sort of get into a moment, I look at a sunset, I automatically think of Star Wars and Luke Skywalker staring up at the twin suns of Tatooine during the binary sunset. You know, it's those sort of moments that help us sort of break out. Like, I got a friend who will go out and just look at the sunset, but I'll then feel this sort of emotion when I look at Luke Skywalker looking at the sunsets. It's that attachment, like you said. People just need that time off to sort of sit down and enjoy that sort of art visually that they see, or audible, or like reading wise. It's just the way that they like sort of attach themselves to it.
Do you ever take some time off working on your writing to experience something else to use as inspiration for writing?
Yes, read.
Okay, well, so what do you read, and how? I mean, what are the benefits of reading, and can someone read too much?
No, you can never read too much. Reading is probably one of the best things that you can possibly, especially for a writer. It's always good to read as much as possible, because there are many authors out there who have different voices, and we all take inspiration. So like, there are some authors where sometimes I just can't get into the way that they write or their voices, because it's just not what I enjoy. But George R. R. Martin, for instance, I've got all of his books, from like Fever Dream, which is about vampires on a ferry boat back in the 1400s. And like right now, I don't know where my book is. Oh, here it is. I'm reading Michael Crichton's The Lost World, Jurassic Park. And it's absolutely fantastic. The way that he writes it, and he talks about chaos theory and things that I would never have actually thought of. And then one of my all-time favorite books, The Ocean at the End of the Lane, which is written by Neil Gaiman, just the way that he writes it and how insane it is. It's just amazing to be able to take all this sort of story and voices from these different artists and sort of take all of that in. I think that it's a very integral part to be able to use as a writer. So and I definitely don't think you can read too much.
Well, of course, not too much of your work. More is coming out later. But how would you describe your own voice? Trying to forget all of the ways that you've been inspired by other people's writings. I mean, when I read the book, there's people speak to each other. There's he said, he exclaimed, he went there. There's small moments of introspection. I mean, how would you describe how you write, and what kind of way of writing you focus on, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, that does make sense. The way that I try and write and focus on is the way that I visually see it and emotionally sort of implement my emotions into the story. So I can't exactly say what my voice is exactly, but I know that the way that I want to tell the story is I feel attached to each and every character that I write, and I visually see it as if I'm standing on the outside of the sort of spectrum, where I can look down upon everything that's happening and sort of engage in that sort of way. So I thought I make sure that when I am writing, that you sort of can feel like taste the food, or like feel the wind, or anything like that, smell the scents, or hear the tune of a guitar. And that's what I sort of want to do, is sort of immersion. And that's why I also wanted to sort of have the in the second book, I'm writing a song where you'll be able to get the guitar tab at the back, or the guitar chords at the back of the book. And if you're a musician yourself, can actually play the song yourself that I've written inside of the book. Wow. As a sort of another immersion inside.
How often does that happen in? I can't think of any other book where it's something that sort of pragmatic has happened, because there's do you know the Del Toro Quest books by Emily Rodda?
Yeah, I grew up on them.
Yeah, I read them for for the first time 2 years ago, and they're great. They're like classic fantasy stories, and there's a few little pictures here and there where it shows you like the maze for something or some sort of like visual riddle, and that's really all I can think of that's like that. But that's just really cool how there's like it's like, I mean, it's like having a map. It's like it's like playing a game where you have to write down notes or like the map or something. It's just cool to have. I mean, that's the benefit of having a physical book, because you can actually use it as like a physical thing.
It's like a vessel. It's a vessel between the worlds.
Yes, it is a tome between dimensions.
Exactly. The way that I always wanted to tell the story is essentially it's a book, but I wanted to make it immersive. So if the reason why I wanted to get out and sort of do authors events in person is so readers can get to know me as a person myself, because I am implementing my own beliefs and my philosophies into the book. For like, if you read the beginning of the book, it's like the second page. It's that part there.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yes. Yeah, so it's all about within the story of Athoria is a deeper meaning of never letting go and holding on to what you love close to your heart. To leave behind a legacy for those whom you love, to always have that piece of you with them for eternity, to always return to the journey which you started, and for them to never be afraid to go on their own journey. It's always, to me, it's about not only what this book leaves behind, but what I leave behind for my daughters as well.
I mean, this is probably a really stupid question, but were your daughters and your relationship with them, were they the primary inspiration for writing this book?
Yes.
Do you think that if they were the only ones who read it, would it still have been worth writing? All those words?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Hey, if no one ever reads the book, no one likes it. It's not a matter of anyone who does like it. It's a matter of I've written something that is close to my heart. And if this may be a little bit dramatic, but if I ever passed away, it's something that my daughters will always be able to have a piece of me with them. If I got hit by a car or anything like that, and I left nothing behind for them, for instance, to remember me by, they'll be able to go to the book and sort of have that piece of me within that book and know that this book is written for them. And if I never got to finish the book, they'll be able to find maybe inspiration one day down their lives to be able to finish what I started.
Where can people go to find out more about you, buy your stuff and everything else?
I'm on every single social media. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Vero.
Vero? I've never heard of Vero before. Vero.
Vero is a social media that Zack Snyder uses, and it was a social media that I joined years ago to help get Zack Snyder's Justice League made, because there's a huge story behind Zack Snyder's Justice League and where I was and why Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman again means so much to me is because the reason why I wanted Zack Snyder's Justice League to be made is because those movies helped me in my darkest times of anxiety and depression. And seeing a artist's vision destroyed by a company without him to be able to show artistically what he wanted to show and tell the story that he wanted to tell was the reason why I joined Vero. But without digressing, that's why I joined Vero.
Yeah, because there was the Justice League, and then there was like the fancier, longer Zack Snyder Justice League. So is that the good one, the true one?
Yes. The whole story behind Justice League 2017 was Zack was sort of bullied out of the movie after his daughter sadly took her life back in 2017, and Cyborg was a massive part of the movie. I don't know if you've seen Zack Snyder's Justice League.
I've seen that one, just not the fancy one.
Oh yeah, the Zack Snyder's actual Justice League is a story of hope and a man who feels broken and alone and feels like, again, he doesn't belong, which is Cyborg. He lost his family. He became a monster. created by his father, rebuilt by his father by alien technology, and he felt like he was never good enough for anyone. And eventually he finds his place. And then Barry Allen is struggling to find his place in the world because his father's in prison and his father wants him to let him go, but Barry doesn't want to. And he goes on this sort of journey, finding this family and becoming the best of the best that his father had always wanted by this. I don't want to spoil the movie for you, but if you eventually watch it, he does something that would make his father proud, essentially. And in Justice League 2017, it was all cut out, butchered, reshot, and all they did was throw in butt jokes and thirsty jokes and took out all the sense of philosophies and hope and anything like that, and just became a shit show, essentially. I hated the 2017 Justice League so much. And what made Zack Snyder's Justice League also the heart of the story is that he finished it for his daughter and for the fans that supported him and his artistic vision, like me, for instance, and many other people as well. We were there, we supported the AFSP, which is the Suicide Awareness Foundation. We donated not all our money, but we donated money to the foundation to help support suicide awareness and let people know that they're not alone. And that's essentially not what Zack Snyder's Justice League is about, but it's a message that it's saying that we are not alone in this world, no matter where we come from, what color, what race, what gender, anything like that. We all come together in the end and we will fight to survive.
All right, Brodie, thanks so much for coming on and talking about stuff. My God, what a conversation. We talked about so many more other things other than your book, but
yes,
it's all good. Well, thanks for coming on. Thank you so much.
No, that's all right. Thank you for having me, Cody. Really appreciate it, and definitely look forward to the next time. And if you want to ever get in contact with me, you can hit me up on any of my social medias, and you can just send me a message on Messenger, and I usually reply.